Hi everyone, and welcome to the 5th episode of NottsPharmCast, another guest podcast, and we're delighted today to welcome Phil Pyatt, who is the CEO of Blood Pressure UK. He's joining Mike Jones, our pharmacist and services implementation manager, today to talk predominantly around Know Your Numbers Week, which takes place between the 8th and 14th of September this year. So Mike, if I can just hand over to you, please, just to kick things off, if we can.
Yes, of course. Well, first of all, it's great to have Phil with us to discuss this really important topic. So we're delighted to have you, Phil. So thank you for coming and
Sorry,
talking
thank you for inviting me.
Brilliant. And talking to our contractors. What I'd like to say first off is that our community pharmacists in Nottinghamshire last year for the 12 months actually supported 56,000 patients by checking their blood pressure, which is amazing. And right at the start of this podcast, I'd really like to say a huge thank you to all the pharmacists who are listening and their teams, because we know now that pharmacy staff can actually take the blood pressure readings as well. So just a huge thank you to everybody, really.
Yeah, thank you. I think the next thing we'd like to talk about, and obviously a lot of contractors are going to be aware of this, but question to you, Phil, if I can, what is the importance of having your blood pressure taken? Because obviously we know that a lot of people don't have symptoms at all. So why is it so important that people should have their blood pressure checked?
So obviously, as a charity, Blood Pressure UK, this is what we're all about. So there's around about, depending on what stat you look at, there's about 14 to 16 million people in the UK with high blood pressure, and about 1 in 3, around about 4.2 to 5 million people are unaware that their blood pressure is raised. Wow. Now, the importance of getting your blood pressure checked is because generally it's quite symptomless. So a lot of people, it's known as the silent killer, because there's a couple of things that having high blood pressure can lead to. So things like stroke, heart attack, kidney disease and vascular dementia are some of the things that result from having high blood pressure. But for a lot of people, unless they're tested randomly, so unless they're going to a pharmacy or they test at home or wherever and with a health professional, they won't know their blood pressure is raised, which means they won't be able to do anything about it until something, as I've said, strokes, heart attacks happen. So that's why it's so important that people get tested.
Okay, so it often takes something a little bit more serious to make people realise. Yeah, I understand that. Mike, anything to add there from a pharmacist's perspective?
Yes, really, because if I just thinking about the 10-year plan, the NHS 10-year plan, which was published 2 or 3 weeks ago, the whole emphasis of the 10-year plan is about prevention rather than cure, and it's much better. Even though treatment for high blood pressure is very straightforward and it makes a huge difference to people's lives, actually preventing that happen, following great well-being advice, following great advice about eating habits, etc., is hugely important. So I think the importance of this particular week, but certainly having your blood pressure taken, can't be underestimated.
No, absolutely not. So clearly, obviously, one of the reasons why Know Your Numbers Week is put on by Blood Pressure UK, Phil, and I think you said in its 25th year, which is
right. So
incredible.
25 years.
So it's not just about Know Your Numbers Week, is it? Yeah, 25 years is incredible. Can you tell us about what's happening this year specifically?
Yeah, sure. So as you mentioned, it's the 8th to the 14th of September this year. And what we try and do as a charity, we're a relatively small charity, but we rely very much on partners. So pharmacies are so vitally important to Know Your Numbers Week. This year we've got a theme around the missing million. So we called it the missing 5 million. It's those people that don't know their blood pressure is raised. And that's why we're really targeting. And we're trying to say to people, it's not, having high blood pressure is not something that happens in deprived areas and things like that. It happens to everyone because of all sorts of things, as pharmacists will know, lifestyle and things like that. This year, we're trying to get as much activity going across the UK as possible. So we'll be really raising awareness. So we've got stuff on social media, and we're really asking, pharmacists are really key to sharing some of that. We see loads of pharmacists online sharing stuff with their communities. So you can go onto our website and we can send some links after this about where to access that on our Know Your Numbers Week page. Pharmacists can also, and anyone that wants to take part, they can buy Know Your Numbers packs on our shop. So there's posters, there's leaflets you can give people on there, and that's really key because it gives that kind of hook for people to take away. And if you're taking their numbers, you can also write them in the leaflet themselves, so that they've got the advice and guidance in there. There's things like lifestyle and medication in there. One thing we're really keen to do this year is to try and get as much data. Data is really hard to get, and again, I'll send you a link in after this. We've created a really anonymous way for those that are taking blood pressure readings. So people can do this at home, but if a pharmacist is taking a reading, they can put the name of their pharmacist in if they want on this link, say where it is, and then they can register those readings. Obviously, we always tell people try and take 3 readings, but even 1, we can then put it in there, and then we get a kind of state of the nation of what's happening. We have asked people to put in a bit more information. So if you can get gender, ethnicity, age, that type of thing, there's 5 questions. That's brilliant. But if the most you can get out of one of the patients that you're testing is just that reading anonymously, then at least we understand what's happening across the UK. So after Know Your Numbers Week, we can say in Nottinghamshire, 30%, 70% of people have high blood pressure, hypertensive, whatever that might be. And that's really, really vital to see what's happening across the UK.
That's great. That's all fantastic stuff there, Phil. So some assets and things for people to get hold of, and we'll put some links through for people to do that. And I think next question to Mike then. Obviously, community pharmacy can play a really key role in this initiative, Mike, and beyond, as we've talked about, not just during Know Your Numbers Week, because we know that blood pressure checks are now part of the Pharmacy First bundle. So why is community pharmacy, the question for you, Mike, so important for this initiative?
Well, it's first of all, it's great to hear from Phil that BP UK actually see community pharmacy as really important, and I think there are probably 2 or 3 reasons really for that. One is accessibility. You find a community pharmacy on the majority of high streets in any of the towns in Nottinghamshire, and of course city as well. So they are accessible. I think the other thing to remember is that a lot of our community pharmacies have extended hours, so they are available as well when patients might want to have their blood pressure taken. So it might be on a Sunday, it could be the weekend, it could be 6:30 at night. So I think that's really important. And I think the other thing for me is it's not just about the blood pressure reading. The blood pressure service specification is quite clear in terms of the conversations that pharmacists can be having with patients around lifestyle choices, around smoking, about weight, etc., etc. So it's not just about the blood pressure reading, it's also about the package of advice, if you like, the wraparound advice that pharmacists can give to those patients, and develop a relationship with those patients. So if they go on, for example, to develop high blood pressure, then the pharmacist knows that patient already, and then they can have a great conversation about any medications that pharmacist might that patient might be prescribed, and therefore reassure them and make sure that they're being taken in the right way. So it's all about holistically looking at the patient, really.
And building some long-term relationships for the benefit of the business. Yeah, brilliant. Okay. I know we were talking about earlier top tips before we started the recording. Any advice, Phil or Mike, for pharmacists about delivering and working through this initiative?
Shall I go?
Do you want to go first, Mike?
If that's okay. I think yes. I mean, I do think this is Phil said it. This isn't just about 1 week in the year. This is about all year round. But this concentration of activity does kickstart, I think, a bigger involvement across Nottinghamshire, which I'm delighted about. Along with that does mean, though, because there is a lot of activity, that we need to be ready as pharmacy contractors, because with the activity that's been done nationally, by all sorts of charities. Not only that, you've got the huge activity that's going on in Nottinghamshire City. Nottingham City, sorry. This will be driving new patients into our pharmacy. So setting our teams up for success. When a patient comes in and says, I'd like my blood pressure taken, it's really important so they can then make the link and have the conversation with the pharmacist and get it done, rather than turning around and going, no, we're not doing that today, because every single pharmacy in Nottinghamshire is actually signed up for the blood pressure service. I think the other thing for me is that it's really straightforward for our pharmacies to be identifying those patients who would be eligible for having a free blood pressure check now. Anybody over 40, because that's the specification, but actually anybody between the ages of 35 and 40, if the pharmacist, after a consultation believes that they should have their blood pressure taken, can have their blood pressure taken as part of this service. So I think upfront identification, and then inviting those patients in when you're having a conversation with them and giving out their prescription medicine each month is really, really helpful. I think during that conversation as well, it's worth mentioning flu vaccinations, and inviting patients in for flu vaccinations, because that does have that's a really important way of protecting patients as well. And I think finally for me is briefing the whole team about know your numbers, because around our pharmacies, it would be great to see posters and leaflets and etc. But you know what? The best marketing for this particular service that's done is the one-on-one conversations that our teams can be having with those patients, mentioning it to those patients and saying something as simple as, would you like a conversation with a pharmacist?
Yeah, exactly. Some really good tips there, Mike. Anything to add, Phil?
Yeah, I agree with everything Mike said there. I think it's just really during Know Numbers Week, like we said, really spread the message, spread the word, so you can get as many people testing as possible. Also talk about home monitoring. For not everyone can afford a home monitor, blood pressure monitor, but you can buy them, as you know, for about £20 now, that have been approved, what we call by the British and Irish Hypertension Society. So they've been approved by hypertension experts, and through that, people can then test at home. So if they can afford that, that's another option, obviously, for pharmacists, not only to sell, but also to get people testing their family and their friends. And I think the education piece is really important. I think not just telling people their blood pressure is high or it's low or it's fine, it's what those numbers mean, what you need to do to reduce it, talk about salt intake and why that's such a key thing to raising your blood pressure. Obviously, as Mike said, smoking, diet, drinking. But once people understand, I think, what blood pressure is and what causes it, very simply, they understand why it's so important to reduce it.
Yeah, some great points as well there, Phil. Thank you. Really appreciate that. I think, unless anybody wants to add anything, we've covered everything for this podcast. So that just leaves me to say thank you so much to Phil Pyatt, CEO of Blood Pressure UK, for joining us today as our second guest, and to Mike Jones. And thank you everybody for listening. We really appreciate it, and we'll listen and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Bye-bye.